your host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for a Dram with friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 43. Today we welcome our good friend Carlos Foggin, a Lieutenant Governor award-winning artist who will be writing the Litany to St Joseph in song for God Squad Canada. Sit back as we have a drink. Welcome to another episode of A Dram with Friends. As you can tell, I'm not in my pub today. We are on the road at the Polaris Center for the Performing Arts, and we're visiting Carlos Foggin. Welcome, Carlos, or I guess you're welcoming me.
Welcome, Sean, to my pub.
And what are we drinking today?
This is a classic whiskey sour made with Demerara rather than the usual simple syrup, and we're using wild turkey as the base.
Thank you. So the reason we're here talking to Carlos is you may have heard that we've been raising funds to put the Litany of St Joseph to music. And this is the man that is going to write the music for us. So I thought
has already started beginning to write it.
There you go.
Has already started to beginning, yes.
Yeah, well. So I thought you might like to know who the man, the myth, the legend is. So who is Carlos Foggin?
Well, Sean is one of my oldest cousins. Sean is actually my oldest cousin on my dad's side. I've known Sean for a very long time. In fact, he probably bought me one of my first birthday presents and probably got suckered into changing a diaper or two, didn't you?
Yes, way back in the day.
So I grew up on a farm, same farm that Sean's mom grew up on. And we had all sorts of animals and farming, hay, that kind of thing. So I grew up as a farm kid, but studied music as a child and did all right at it and turned into a career.
And that's one of the reasons you started up the Rocky Mountain Symphony, was because you were the small town farm kid where you weren't exposed to classical music, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when I was a kid growing up on the farm, even though I took piano lessons in the big city of Lethbridge, which is now maybe 70,000 people. I didn't even know that they had a symphony orchestra. So Lethbridge has a symphony. They play about 4 concerts a year. And I didn't know that. So I'd never actually heard one live until I was in my 20s. And had I, maybe I would have gone into music a lot earlier in my life, studied it academically. And so I started the orchestra to take music to people on the road in their small towns, not to be the only classical music source in their life, but to give them a chance to at least hear it for the first time and decide if that's something they wanted to do as a career, as a hobby, or just for exposure.
And it's opening up people to a whole new type of music that they're not used to hearing. And what was funny was my son Peter, he loved classical music. Dad, I like this music. And so he downloaded all this stuff, and he was in a study hall at the school, and we talked to the teacher about this. So he said, well, I'm bringing in my classical records. He used to, I think, work for the Winnipeg Symphony. Okay. So he had access to all this stuff. And what was funny was Peter was done. The teacher was telling me Peter had left, so he was going to take the music off, and there's this kid with like the Slayer t-shirt and stuff. He goes, no, that's okay, you can leave that on. That and just the exposure. And that's one of the reasons that God Squad wanted to undertake this endeavor, was the rich history of music in the church. And that's something maybe you can talk a bit about.
Absolutely. So the orchestra started out in the church and in the court salons and in the court of the royal families. So without the patronage of the aristocracy, and more importantly the church, classical music wouldn't have taken off. You think of the great masters, J.S. Bach, all of the music he wrote, with rare exception, was for the church. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, all of his early music, all the symphonies, the masses, were commissioned by, sorry, not the symphonies, I lied. The masses were commissioned by the Archbishop of Salzburg. So Mozart wrote new masses, settings for feast days, so the solemn vespers, etc., that we wouldn't have had there not been someone that wanted new music, had the means to pay for it, and an orchestra and a choir at their disposal to make it happen.
And the sacred music grew out of that within the church, and was like, you were an organist, was your first real instrument.
That's right, yeah.
And you're, what is it, a fellow of the Canadian Organist Society?
It makes me sound so old, yeah. A fellow of the Royal Canadian College of Organists. There's few of us living. In fact, there's only been 100 named. Well, there might be 103 now.
Okay.
In 2016, I was named the 100th.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
Pretty old club since 1909 in Canada. Actually, the oldest musicians association. So.
Oh, really?
Something.
There you go. And there's something to be said for that music in the church, and so few undertake learning that. And that's one of the hopes is, I think when you and I were talking about it, there really hasn't been anything like this written for St. Joseph in that sacred tradition.
No, I mean, since the classical masters and the kind of the golden age of music in the church, where there was funding for it, and it was, well, you think back to the time of Beethoven or Mozart, the music that we're listening now as old music was the music of their day. That was the Rihanna and the Britney Spears of the time. So it was really the popular music made its way into the church, and it since tastes have changed, but it has remained. It stood the test of time. So yes, by the time St. Joseph was canonized, that was long gone. We were, what are we, 100 and...
But I think he's been canonized a long time. It's when he was elevated to like patron of
right.
Patron of the universal.
Patron, yeah.
And that was only 150 years ago.
Right, which is not that long ago.
In church history, that's just like a second or two.
Right, so you look at all the great music, like the Mozart, the Beethovens, even the Verdi Requiem was kind of pre then.
Yeah.
And tastes have changed, especially the First World War, really changed the way the classical music worked. It got very avant-garde, and it was more academic to listen to, and so rock music, pop music took over, and so we have kind of a moving in liturgical music towards that, which, I mean, we can't say nay or yea to. It was the time during Mozart's time, it's happened now. Things are cyclical, they change. My vision was to take an old form, so using an orchestra, something that's maybe seen as timeless, and mixing that with choir, implementing some Gregorian chant in there, using the Latin language, so that it's universal, it's timeless, sounds old, but it's new, just as an homage to St. Joseph, the patron saint, St. Joseph, the Universal Church, and showing what can be done with an old form. New wine in an old bottle, so to speak.
Well, and one of my inspirations was the Chaplet of Divine Mercy and Song, where you see that it's a new form, but the response to that, I think the YouTube video has over 12 million views or something like that. So trying to create something as a gift to the church to honor St. Joseph in this year of St. Joseph that hopefully will be something that is timeless and shared. And as we're recording this on the day after Canada Day 2021, and the church needs some help, and there's just trying to turn the hearts of the people using something beautiful and that's what our hope is. And you're the man, I think, that can deliver that. So,
well, let's hope. I actually put the first pen to paper yesterday.
okay.
So let's hope that the good Lord is listening and gives me the inspiration I need for that.
That's what the hope is. So, other than making fancy drinks, because we talk about faith, food, fun, and family. So, you talked about us growing up as family. So I was the oldest cousin on my grandpa's side. That side of the family is a devout Mormon family, and the example given of family is something that we can hopefully learn and take as we move forward. Our grandpa's funeral was in a small Mormon stake, right? There's stakes, and the family took up the entire church. They had to open up the back.
Yeah, they have these little accordion sliders that go into the gym, and they filled up a full-size basketball court as well.
Because I forget the exact numbers, but there was 7 children. There was 36 or 39 grandchildren, and then how many great-grandchildren? And then, so I was blessed enough to have a picture with Grandpa Foggin, with my mom, my mom, my daughter, and her son. So we had 5 generations, which is something incredible. And that's one of the things that God Squad is trying to promote, that we're not making big changes today, but hopefully changes that will pass on, much like the music that we're talking about, that will stand the test of time and will pass through generations. And I think Grandpa Foggin was a good example of the importance of family and growing that family. So
absolutely, he was a man of faith, but even though his children went on to various faith traditions, religion was never discussed at family gatherings. It was the family was first.
Yeah.
And the togetherness was most important.
Yeah. I built, he talks about the farm. I built 4 full service campsite down there, and they have an outdoor kitchen. It's a great place to go and unwind. It's been a few years for me. My brother goes down there with his family all the time, and
his trailer's still there. I saw it last week.
Yeah. So my brother Paul likes that. So
yeah, our backyard has hookups in case anybody needs an RV camping spot that's still in the province.
There you go. Well, we were talking because one of the things God Squad's talking about as another evangelization tool is disc golf, and because it's become extremely popular. If you go on a course, it's definitely our target demographic. It's all young men or young couples, and so we're going to look at the possibility of outreach, but setting up a disc golf course down there would be amazing.
Well, it's a wide open prairie. You could throw that,
yeah.
Especially if the wind's blowing from the west. You may never see that frisbee again.
That's true. So we also we talk about food, and I know that's one of your. I've seen some of those posts you put on Facebook.
Well, certainly not on the scale that Sean goes to.
No. I think Carlos far exceeds anything I do. I do the comfort food really well, but Carlos, you play around with all kinds. What's your go-to thing right now?
What's my go-to thing right now? Well, last night I found in the bottom of my freezer. I'm not kidding. It was 4 years old.
Oh.
It was vacuum sealed. It was still perfect.
Okay.
A big 5-pound AAA tomahawk.
Oh.
And I put that right in the vacuum seal bag. It had already been pre-seasoned, so I just dropped it in at 130 degrees for 8 hours into the sous vide. So it was just a perfect rare all the way through. Then finished it over 900 degree mesquite smoke for about 4 minutes aside, just to give it a crisp char. And then we served that with some mustard greens and arugula from the garden with fresh strawberries, and we had some nice banana peppers growing in the greenhouse that we sliced on top of that. So everything right from within 10 feet of my front door.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is a Friday, and he's talking about this amazing steak that That's some, and I take it worked out quite well.
My house is almost 100 kilometers from your house. Could it count as a pilgrimage?
There you go.
It's within the diocese. I don't
There
know.
you go. So, yeah, and that's where I'm quite excited to see where this goes. And so, one of the segments is, what advice do you give your 18-year-old self? Given the fact that even young men today don't understand what a man even is. So,
What advice do I give my 18-year-old self? Don't listen to your high school guidance counselor. That would be my advice to my 18-year-old self. My high school guidance counselor decided that I was smart enough that I should go into law or medicine, and that was the way to get off the farm. And I went to school and tried all these things, and I was going to be a doctor, I was going to be a lawyer, I was going to try everything. It wasn't where my heart lay, even though I could have done it. I just didn't want to. So at 30 years old, after 12 years of trying to find my way, after my grandpa, the last thing he said to me was, go back to school. This is Grandpa Foggin.
yeah.
He said, go back to school, doctor. And I don't know if he was hallucinating or thought I should get a doctorate in music. But I went back to school and did a music degree, and the fellowship of the Royal Canadian College of Organists is an equivalent to a PhD. So I think I've done them all right there. I don't need to go back to school to get a PhD. But my advice would be, follow where your heart leads you. That's the way we get in touch with our spirit, with heaven. That's how it communicates to us. So God gives us help on earth, but he also talks to us in our heart, and so do what's there, and you probably won't be led too far astray.
There you go. Now, being a Mormon, I don't know in your upbringing. I know you've done a lot with the Catholic tradition.
A bad Mormon, apparently.
No, but so Jeff Cavins talks about riding with a posse. So, do you have a go-to saint? Is there someone that you like to communicate with, or think?
Well, I've got a couple. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Saint Cecilia, because she plays the organ. She's pretty cool. And Saint Gregory. He penned the first chant. He gave us some of those beautiful things that were to be written. So between the two of them, they're pretty close to my heart.
So was he the Gregorian chant? So it was Saint Gregory. How many did, or what kind of work did he do?
So
with it?
we still today sing music that was penned by Saint Gregory, especially some of the music at the Tridium.
Okay.
And Good Friday music.
Wow.
If you go back into the Gregorian chants far enough, you can find one of the oldest pieces of music that he didn't even write, that he simply wrote down, and that, well, not wrote down, but codified, and that is the Ambrosian Chant. There's a Gloria in Mass 8 that comes from the Ambrosian Chant, which is still used today in the Diocese of Milan. They still use the Ambrosian Chant that is still their official music of that diocese, and it's from the 400s. It's
Wow.
1600 years old, and it's marvelous. It's just simply stunning. So,
And that's where I hope that we're able to expose our young people to some of this. I know Father Cristino is very much open to some of the more traditional music, and just exposing our young people, because they seem to be drawn by different things, and music is definitely very, I forget who said it, like singing is like praying twice, or
absolutely, yeah.
and so Carlos, I want to thank you for inviting me to your pub here at the Center for Performing Arts. And
Not bad for a theater bar, eh?
No, especially since it really hasn't really opened, because COVID we just opened yesterday, so
To maskless gatherings.
yes. So the term whiskey comes from Ireland, and it's called Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And my prayer is we continue to lead many souls to the true water of life. Thank you for having me. Awesome.
Always a joy.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Like and subscribe. Go to all podcast platforms to look for it on podcast, or go to godsquad.ca to support our mission.